is your emergency?
Just killing my mom and my sister.
Fear of the dark.
Us as human beings were created in our own unique ways. The only thing that differentiates amongst us are religion, race, language, and creed. We're all the same, coming from the same lineage of old. All the traits that are comprised within us to make us who we are, our emotions, our values, our commitments that allow us to strive towards our peaks in society as model citizens within our communities. Compassion for your fellow man is a given right under the grace beyond the stars that was instilled in our genes. However, deep inside of us all institute two dormant sins, good and evil. Love and hate are very powerful emotions that are linked to our genetic makeup. The choices, or rather free will, would either boost the very morale that gives us structure, or would be the very damnation of us all. Love can blossom on the bloodiest of battlefields, but the opposing side, everything associated with the likes of hate, is an ongoing roaring flame of hellfire. They say that we're all different in our own way. It's best not to judge, but rather to understand through true compassion. In the case of Brianna Ghey was not only a horrifying ordeal, but it also was a case of an individual that lacked the same compassion that we all possess. Stay tuned and witness the sad case of Brianna Ghey. The dark web is an unregulated version of the regular internet, and while it is legal to use, it is often accessed to download banned content and buy and sell illegal substances, among other unregulated activities. There is much debate about whether red rooms, which allegedly show live streams of murder and torture of real people, actually exist. The dark web, also known as darknet websites, are accessible only through networks such as Tor, the Onion Routing project, that are created specifically for the dark web. Tor browser or Tor accessible sites are widely used amongst the darknet users and can be identified by the domain .onion. Tor browsers create encrypted entry points and pathways for the user, allowing their dark web searches and actions to be anonymous. Identities and locations of darknet users stay anonymous and cannot be tracked due to the layered encryption system. Trans teenager Brianna Ghey, 16 years old, was brutally murdered by her friend Scarlett Jenkinson alongside Eddie Ratcliffe, who were both 16 at the time of their arrest. During interrogation, they claimed to have accessed live murder and torture red rooms online prior to the killing. 16-year-old Brianna, who was transgender, was fatally stabbed 28 times in broad daylight after being lured to Colchip Linear Park in Warrenton, Chester, on the afternoon of February 11, 2023.
Now first, you can see Brianna meeting with Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe. This was filmed at a bus stop before they make their way into the park. Scarlett and Eddie identified by the X and Y above their heads, and there, in the white hoodie, BG, Brianna Ghey. Now later on that day, and some dash camera footage was released after Scarlett and Eddie were picked up by dash cam video leaving the park, but without Brianna.
As a teenager, Ghey was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism, which her mother said impaired her ability to identify dangerous situations as well as anxiety. These diagnoses also meant that Ghey did not participate in regular lessons and required one-on-one tutoring in her school's inclusion room, where Ghey would eventually meet Jenkinson. While Scarlett Jenkinson, who was described by the judge as the driving force behind the murder, the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, said was one of the most disturbing cases their lawyers had ever dealt with. They found out that 4 months before Brianna's murder, Jenkinson gave a young pupil a cannabis treat without telling her what it was. The 13-year-old fell ill after eating the sweet, and police, who treated the incident as a spiking, were called in. She faced permanent exclusion after an incident on September 27, 2022. As an alternative to exclusion, Jenkinson was allowed to transfer to Birchwood, where she met and formed a friendship with Ghey. Before the murder, Jenkinson displayed a fascination with serial killers, watching documentaries and keeping notes about notorious killers including Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy. She reportedly used a Tor browser to access videos of torture and murder on the dark web. Eddie Ratcliffe, a pupil at the Coltiff High School at the time of the murder, was described by a fellow student as a role model who achieved top grades. Ratcliffe first met Jenkinson in school at the age of 11, who was a quiet and studious former kickboxing champion. He was also known to be a loner. According to the neighbors, he never showed any signs of violence prior to the murder. However, Ratcliffe had a fascination with knives and also collected blades. He also bought the hunting knife that was used during the murder during a skiing trip in Bulgaria. Brianna met Ratcliffe just hours before she was killed. Brianna believed the three of them were just going to hang out together at the park, but the sickening reality was that Brianna had been lured there under false pretenses. The trial heard had Jenkinson and Ratcliffe had a fascination with violence, torture, and murder and had been planning the killing for weeks. Messages between them showed that they encouraged one another to think about how they would actually carry out a killing. During sentencing, Miss Justice Yip said, "You both took part in a brutal and planned murder which was sadistic in nature and where a secondary motive was hostility towards Brianna because of her transgender identity." She said Jenkinson was motivated by a deep desire to kill and pronounced her concern on hearing that the teenager had expressed the desire to kill again after her conviction. She had written a new kill list since her detention, which included the names of some of her carers the court heard. Both teenagers spoke about the people they wanted to kill, and by January 26, just 2 weeks before Brianna's death, they had a compiled kill list of 5 people, and Brianna happened to be one of them. Brianna became their focus after they failed to lure one of the others out via a fake social media profile. She would be easier to kill, they agreed, in one of the thousands of text messages exchanged in the run-up to the murder on February 11th of last year, with Jenkinson handwriting the plan for how, where, and when they would stab Brianna. They even had a code word, which was "gay," to signal the start of the attack in Coltiff Linear Park in Warrington. Jenkinson messaged Ratcliffe to say, "A woman got stabbed in the park." "Holy crap," was Ratcliffe's reply, despite the pair later admitting to the police that they were present during the stabbing, albeit blaming each other for what happened. The following day, Jenkinson messaged Brianna saying, "Girl, is everything okay? Some teenage girl got killed in Linear Park and it's all over the news." Given evidence, Ratcliffe insisted that he was not transphobic and blaming the murder on Jenkinson. Yip said that his messages were extremely transphobic and dehumanizing. But it was his hunting knife that was used to brutally stab Brianna 28 times. There was no forensic evidence linking Jenkinson to the weapon, and no spots of blood were found on her clothing. In her post-conviction confession, she claimed that it was because they had been washed. An initial psychiatric assessment of Jenkinson was suggested that she had traits of autism and ADHD, but the psychiatrist changed his diagnosis post-conviction, saying she had a severe form of conduct dissociation disorder, one of the features of which had no empathy. Judge Mrs. Justice Yip said that this provided some explanation for how Jenkinson could commit such a dreadful murder, but did not lower her culpability. She told the teenager, "Scarlett, I have concluded that the primary motivation for Brianna's murder was your deep desire to kill. The messages reveal your fantasies and show your sadistic motives. Brianna's murder was exceptionally brutal." After the arrest, Ratcliffe was diagnosed with autism, and a judge accepted that his social skills were not as developed as most people your age. Consultant forensic psychiatrists found that he has a mild form of autism and selective mutism, but she said, "Your autism cannot provide any real excuse for the offense." The pair were arrested at their home the day after the murder. Detectives would soon unreveal the crime despite the killers arrogantly presuming that their endless lives would save them. The court heard how the teenagers' webs of deceit began shortly after the killing when the pair began to craft what they thought would emerge to be a cover story.
So you are under caution, so anything you say is getting recorded. Okay.
If me being suspect is because I was the last person seen her, or how come I'm suspect?
Pardon?
How come I'm a suspect?
How come you're a suspect?
Because I'm the last person that's seen her, is it?
I don't know. All the information I've received is you are a suspect. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Eddie, you're locked up suspicion of murder, alright? You don't have to say anything, but you may harm you eventually don't mention when questioned. So you later line in court, and if you do say the evidence, do you understand?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
just unlock these.
I can explain it.
No, listen.
Right, listen.
Do it all on interview, alright? You're going to take it to the wrong court, you'll be interviewed about it, they'll ask you questions, alright?
Yeah.
Nicola Wynne Williams, a senior prosecutor at the CPS, said, "This sentencing hearing concludes one of the most disturbing cases that the Crown Prosecution Service has ever had to deal with. At just 16, Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe are convicted killers responsible for the brutal murder of a vulnerable young girl who thought they were her friends. They have been given a life term of imprisonment and have shown no remorse." Esther Ghey said of the killers, "I have moments where I feel sorry for them, because they also ruined their own lives. But I have to remember that they felt no empathy for Brianna when they left her bleeding to death after their premeditated and vicious attack, which was carried out not because Brianna had done anything wrong, but just because one hated trans people and the other thought it would be fun." In the documents, the teenagers never looked at each other and were separated by security guards and intimidators employed to ensure that they understood the court process. Neither reacted as the sentence was passed, with Jenkinson playing with a green fidget toy. They were convicted on December 20th, 2023 at the Manchester Crown Court and were both sentenced on February 2nd, 2024 to life imprisonment, with a minimum of 22 years for Jenkinson and 20 years for Ratcliffe before being eligible for parole. The court decided the offense was primarily motivated by sadistic tendencies and that the hate against transgender people was a secondary motivation of Ratcliffe. The murder of Brianna involved a significant degree of brutality and planning.
A serious offence with multiple aggravating factors. That is the context in which I impose minimum terms which are lengthy for offenders of your age, albeit significantly less than an equivalent sentence for an adult. The parole board will have to decide if and when either or both of you can be released. That will only happen if you no longer pose a danger. If you are released, you will remain on licence for life and you may be recalled to prison. I will now sentence each of you. You may remain seated. In both cases, the relevant statutory surcharge will apply. Scarlett Jenkinson, for the murder of Brianna Ghey, you will be detained at His Majesty's pleasure. I set the minimum term at 22 years, less the 352 days that you have spent on remand. Eddie Ratcliffe, for the murder of Brianna Ghey, you will be detained at His Majesty's pleasure. I set the minimum term at 20 years, less the 352 days that you have spent on remand.
Good evening, everyone. This is Yuri K, and this is the end of the video. Please leave a comment and let us know your opinions on the matter. If you happen to like this content, please check out our other videos. Make sure you like and share amongst your friends and family to help our community grow. You happen to be new to this channel? Please make sure you subscribe. It's free, and you can always change it in the future. You have some terrifying story suggestions? If so, make sure that you send it to my email, fearofthedarkstories@gmail.com, and I'll feature it in a future segment. But you guys stay safe out there, and remember to always be afraid of the dark.